Do you find yourself avoiding situations, things, just stuff, and you feel almost like kind of paralyzed a little bit? You're like, oh my God, I just want to avoid it all. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. And it's going to be jam-packed with some information. 6 different types of avoidances and 7 negative things that happen the longer you avoid. So welcome to the Positivity Experience. Let's kick that avoidance. Check it out. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Positivity Experience. It's your girl, Lori, and man, oh man, am I so excited about this topic. It is going to be jam-packed. We are going to talk about 6 different areas that you avoid in, and we're going to talk about 7 or so ways in which it is hampering your growth. And boy, oh boy, do I have a lot to get to. Now, I'm going to give you a lot of tips on how you can start to switch that over on Patreon. If that's something that you're interested in, every week I try to do a complementing podcast to give you tools on where to start along with a worksheet. And that's on patreon.com/the positivity experience with an X. Or you can just check wherever the show notes are and it'll take you out there if that's your jam. But this is a topic that I am so excited to talk to you about because oh boy, I have ADHD, I have OCD, I've had anxiety disorder, depression, you name it, I've had it. So I feel like before we go into this, I need you to understand you don't get to use your neurodivergence, which I have, as an excuse. It is a reason. So these things may seem a little bit more difficult for you because of your neurodivergence. However, it is a reason, but not an excuse. So you don't get to go, yeah, but that doesn't pertain to me because I have neurodivergence. No, it's just a little bit difficult and a little bit harder for you to work through it. And there's maybe a different approach, but this is doable. And how do I know it's doable? Because I've been neurodivergent. I've realized what that is all my life, right? Before it was actually labeled that. And yes, you can get there. Is it going to take work? Yes. Is it going to take daily work for the rest of your natural born life? Yes. Okay. But I feel like I want to get that out there because so many people listen and go, yeah, but it's harder for me because I have ADHD. It's harder for me because I have this. Okay. Yeah. And that's a reason. So you lean into that. You don't avoid it. You don't go, well, it's going to be too hard for me and it's too overwhelming for me, so I'm just not going to do it. No, that's behavioral avoidance. And boy, oh boy, are we going to talk about that because your girl, it was the queen of that. And even now, if I don't have my systems in play, my behavioral avoidance is always lurking in the sidelines, right? And that's something to be aware of. You're not going to just get over things and get through it and never experience it again. I think that's a big misconception that so many people have. Like, okay, well, I'm just going to get better. I'm never going to experience this again. That's not a true statement whatsoever. It's always going to be lurking on the sidelines, whether it be anxiety, whether it be depression, whether it be ADHD, whether it be OCD. I've been diagnosed with OCD, ADHD, anxiety, depression. Oh boy, you name anything with a letter, I got PTSD. We're here. Now, those don't control me anymore. They used to. Which is why I went into this as a profession in the first place, to understand my brain, to take ownership of my brain, not hate it. You don't get to hate your ADHD and depression and anxiety and bipolar. Don't hate that. You lean into it. Again, it makes it a little bit more difficult, but you lean into it. You don't try to avoid it and give yourself the excuses, well, I am this, so it's just whatever. We are not going to do that because it's never really fully going to go away because it's part of how this brain is. And while neuroplasticity can be rewired and you can change your mindset, you can live an extremely amazingly happy, productive life while still being neurodivergent. So don't listen to it and go, well, I can't do this. You can. You just got to be able to know that this is going to be something that you have to do every single day. If I don't have my systems in place every single day, 365 days a year, it takes one day, and things start creeping out. And I got to be like, okay, let me address it. And I don't get mad at it. I lean into it. So I'm going to talk to you about the 6 levels of avoidance, or six different ways in which you avoid. And we know it can come from anxieties, depression, personality disorders, PTSD. Again, you can't outrun things, and don't try to make an excuse as to why you are the way you are and then just leave it be. Well, this is just how I am. No, we're not doing that. Okay. So I want to talk to you about number 1. And this is the one out of all of these. If I had to say one is always jumping up and down and going, hey girl, Hey girl, come avoid me. It is behavioral avoidance. This is where your procrastination lives. This is where you put off tasks to the very last minute. This is where the moment there's a little bit of challenge and it's not fun, you will give yourself 84,000 reasons and excuses as to why you can't do it. This is behavioral avoidance. Okay, so if something becomes unpleasant, right? If I'm like, well, it's time to do taxes, I can't tell you that I'm just going to go, woo, it is time to do taxes. So exciting. But I'm also not going to go into it like, oh my God, these taxes. It's something that I know needs to be done. I have a system in place. I put myself on a very specific schedule because when you have ADHD, boy, oh boy, you can't have a lot of guesswork. Can't have a lot of guesswork. And then, of course, I have OCD with it. So the OCD wants one thing and the ADHD thinks it wants what OCD wants, but it also wants 75,000 other things because there's always a squirrel moment at any given time. There's always something shiny. There's always something different, right? And so, you don't get to hate that. You embrace it and you lean into it. We're going to talk a lot about that on Patreon, but I am going to talk to you later on this podcast on how, and I guess I can talk to you as we're going along. But for me, I have a very specific routine. You guys know my me time is unequivocally, too big of a word here for my brain at this moment because my ADHD is like, oh, say 10 things, right? But it is for sure the most important thing on the planet to me is my me time and my systems, the 5 journals. If you want to know about the 5 journals, go out to the 5 journal series. It's trademarked. It's mine. I didn't create journaling, but I did create the 5 journals. And I did that based in my ADHD brain, based in a way that I have to segregate things out into individual things. Because if I don't, everything seems overwhelming. Everything seems too much and jumbled. I'm not going to hate it. I'm going to use my ADHD, my anxiety, any of my depressions, anything as a superpower. Instead of hating it and feeling like a victim to it, you use it as a superpower. So when you procrastinate, right, it's because you're like, oh God. And I remember in school, there could be something that was due in a month. I would find okay, I'll do it tomorrow. Okay. I'm going to get to it. Next thing you know, it's 48 hours or 24 hours before it's due. Now I'm even more stressed. And then you lie to yourself and you go, but you know what? You do great under pressure. See, now you negotiate with yourself. You go, well, of course you do good. Hello. It's fine for you to wait. You're going to see it any way you want. So instead of working on it, you go, well, you know what? I'm great at last minute stuff. I work really great under pressure. Let me let you in on a little secret, scientifically proven. There's like under 1%, maybe 1% of the planet, not of you, just of the states, of the planet that is good at multitasking. And no, we all think that we're that 1%. We are not. Your brain is not meant to multitask, which is why you have to break things down. Don't tell me you don't want to do the 5 journals and then tell me that you're miserable and you don't know how to get out of it. Stop asking for tools. And then when you don't like the tools that you get or they seem too hard, you avoid them. What doesn't work the way it's not meant to be easy. It's not meant to be fast, and it's not meant to be comfortable because nothing grows in the comfort zone. So when you have behavioral avoidance, that's where your procrastination lives. Stop looking for motivation. It is not a real thing. Motivation is a temporary thing, fast burst, fast fix. Self-discipline is what you need because showing up for yourself when you feel like it and when you're good, well, hell, you don't get special bells and whistles behind that. Sorry, it doesn't take effort to show up for yourself that way. It's when you don't feel like doing it. And the more that you avoid something, because in your mind, by avoiding it, there's a level of control. There's your inner brat, your ego, part of your ego, the id part of your ego that says, well, I don't have to do it. I'm not going to do it. Even though it can be self-sabotaging, which is what we talked about last week. Make sure you listen to last week's podcast on self-sabotage, is you have to understand that when you're sabotaging something, you're not hurting anybody but yourself. The monster in the room is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And at one point, it's going to suffocate you. You can avoid the gray elephant in the room all you want. At the end of the day, you're making the elephant grow and grow and grow and grow. And the elephant is going to continue to grow until you don't have any more room and you have to deal with it. And so that is your behavioral avoidance. And I'm going to talk to you about the reasons why all of these avoidances you want to get a handle on. And I'll tell you why and how it's like hampering so much because you think you're controlling things, by avoiding, by only doing the things you want to do, by not really addressing your deeper rooted issues. But the reality is you are really imprisoning yourself to every one of these things. So number 2 is social avoidance. Now, this is big if you have social anxiety, a lot of things, right? And it's when you're avoiding any kind of confrontation, you're definitely avoiding judgment, right? You're too worried about, and trust me, I could care less about judgment for people myself, and I want to get you there so bad. Book a session with me ASAP. Let's get you there. Like, let's do this, because it is such a pleasure to be on the other side of that, because it gives you so much more strength and grace, and you don't really worry about it. You show up socially regardless of how it's perceived. And that does take time. I'm not going to lie to you. It takes time, and it's a daily practice. And there's times that I've had people in college and even high school, but mostly college and shortly thereafter, they will drop a class because they are so worried about public speaking. Public speaking is one of my favorite things. So it's always hard for me to kind of, I get it. I do get it, but it's just hard for me to understand. I'm like, just get up and talk. Like, I want to be like, just get up and talk. They're like, oh my God, it's petrifying. And it's literally like, for some people, it's scarier than death. And it's real. It's very real to you. For me, I embrace it, but not everybody is going to do that. But until you face it, you can't keep running from your stuff. You cannot keep running from these triggers. You can't do it. I mean, I guess you can do it, but you're going to end up feeling like you're feeling right now. Until you get uncomfortable and embrace it and go to it scared and go to it in fear, go to it in anxiety, go to it thinking you're going to vomit, go to it thinking you're going to pass out, do it. And do it often. And then what happens is the big, bad, scary monster becomes smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And then you realize, wait a minute, look at me in control of myself. Because you're letting what you fear, you're letting these fears of social hamper you. It's not blaming, it's awareness. See, you got to be aware of what you're dealing with in order to heal it. Don't look at it as blame, but look at it as self-awareness, because you got to be self-aware of what's going on with you, right? So, it's okay. You got to be okay with interacting with new people, and you're not just going to feel ready one day and be like, okay, yep, today's the day. Today's the day. I feel ready and inspired. I'm going to go meet some new people. No, it's not going to be done on your time and your terms, because you're always going to find a way to talk yourself out of just about anything. That's how excuses work, right? You got to be stronger than your excuses, because your brain will have them. Mine continuously has them every single day to this day. If I'm doing something that's less than fun, if I'm doing something that's less than enjoyable, then my brain starts with stupid negotiations. Listen, you know what? You worked out yesterday. You don't have to worry about it today. Oh, you know what? You've done really good. That's enough. Oh, don't you want to sit down? You deserve this. And yes, you do deserve rest. That's why I build in rest pretty specifically in the evening. I go off grid. I don't need the socials. Because remember, another thing, going back to number 1, going into the behavioral avoidance, you will distract the hell out of yourself. You will go on social media. You will say, okay, I'm going to escape this. You're not escaping anything. You're giving yourself this dopamine hit instead of pushing yourself through it. And that's a big one, because in behavioral avoidance, you'll find, let's go out to go shopping at Target. I've done that a million times. Oh, I got so much to do. Well, first let me run to Target. I don't even need to go to Target, but I'm going to just avoid it. Like, we all do it. Just don't let that become the norm. Be aware of it. Give yourself grace on it, compassion, and you keep it moving. So number 3, that is emotional avoidance. Yep, this is big. Now, for me, it doesn't, again, my biggest one that I always deal with and that I've got a pretty good handle on, but I have to do it every single day, is number 1, and that's behavioral avoidance. That is mostly my biggest thing. All of these other ones, social, definitely not it. But for you, it might be different, and you might have all of them. But when you're dealing with a level of emotional avoidance, you're avoiding suppressing you're avoiding processing your emotions, right? So that's where you become that numb, where you're like, yeah, I got this feeling, but I don't want to display it. Like, you don't really know what to do with it, because there's a level of vulnerability that comes with emotions, but only you have to validate them. But by avoiding your emotional feelings, you will put that outwards. You will start saying, well, people have to do this. That comes with a level of entitlement. That comes with somebody owes me something. Believe it or not, that's where that emotion comes in at, right? You're going to ignore these uncomfortable feelings. You're going to ignore these emotions, and you're going to say, well, I don't want to have these emotions, so I'm just going to avoid it. I'm going to always listen. I do this with my clients left and right. We're going to go through the fire. What you are afraid of, how you don't want to feel, and all of these things, oh, we're going to feel it. We're going to do it. Because the more that you avoid something doesn't mean that it goes away. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that goes for any of these that I'm talking to you about. Right? So you have to understand that even though you're adapting it, in the short term, you think, okay, this might be great. And sometimes maybe it is for a short period of time, a couple hours, so you can get to somewhere where you can process it. But when it's prolonged, oh my God, it will lead to so much victim state, and you will get angry. You will be living in defensiveness. You know, when you see, somebody says something to you like, oh, did you take your medicine today? Of course I took my medicine today. What do you think? I'm crazy? Whoa. Just saying you needed to take your medicine, bro. And so you have to understand that when you are not dealing with your sadness and your angers and your fears and your distressing thoughts, and you're expecting it to either because then you'll start lying to yourself. Well, and you start making excuses. Well, it's okay that I feel this way. Yes, it is okay if you're going to process it. It's not okay to feel this way and live in a victim state because it's comfortable to be there. There is comfort in chaos. You got to push through that. Right? Because on the other side of that is where there's so much more joy, the joy in which you seek. Excuse me. Now, there's also number 4 is cognitive avoidance. So I want to talk to you about cognitive avoidance. This is you are trying so hard to avoid certain memories and certain thoughts. So let me explain. And this has been proven scientifically multiple times. If I say to you, hey, I don't want you to think of an apple. Do not think of a red, juicy apple. Don't think of one. Well, in your brain, there's a subconscious part of your brain and even conscious. It's like, okay, cool. Oh, wait, don't think of that apple. Nope, don't think of the apple. In turn, you're obsessing on this apple without knowing it because you're telling yourself stop thinking about it, but you're thinking about it. What you resist will continue to persist in your entire life. Okay. But if you keep avoiding your distressing thoughts, if you keep avoiding, any kind of trauma in the past, like thinking about that, you're going to temporarily allow yourself to have a little bit of comfort, but in the long run, it's still there. It's still creeping, which is why if you got to feel it to heal it. So the more you try to avoid it, thinking that you're protecting yourself, you're really not. And it creates this level of imprisonment. Cognitive. I'm not asking you to obsess on the memory. I'm not asking you to replay it and just try to make it make sense. But when you're getting through it, you do have to expose yourself to it so you can process it. Avoiding it is not your friend. Avoiding any of this is not your friend. Don't live there. Don't be a victim to past circumstances. Don't ruminate there, but you got to be there in order to process it. Right? So that's number 4. And again, you can have all of these. You can have one of these. Like I said, for me, it's basically 1 and I guess maybe 7 or 6 because 6 and 1 are very similar and we're almost there. So you'll hear what I mean. And so then there's number 5 and number 5 is mine, not number 6, number 5. And that's task avoidance. This goes really close with your behavioral stuff. And it's when you're avoiding a different, a certain level of a task or responsibility. This is why when you ask a teenager to take out the trash or to load the dishwasher or do the cat litter or whatever the case may be, they go, okay, I will. And then it's 3 hours later and you're like, did you do the litter? Okay, I'm gonna. And sometimes if you stop them and you kind of make them or direct them to do it right away, it can become distressful for them. Doesn't matter. They're going to have to process it because real life doesn't work on your time. Real life doesn't really care what you want to do and what you're avoiding. By the way, the world will continue to go around. The world will continue to go, and it doesn't care about your avoidance. The world is not going to stop because of you. So you do have to understand this. But the more that you are deliberately putting off stuff, your girl here, again, 1 in 6, I keep saying 6, 1 in 5 go really close hand in hand. And if you find a task boring or challenging, very often you get a little, especially when you have ADHD or whatever, like I said, reason, not an excuse, it can become overwhelming. Well, a lot of times you can be paralyzed with that. You can be like, fuck, I don't feel like doing anything. Well, that's cool and all. But let me give you an example. Like I was saying with the laundry, I know that if I don't take that laundry out and fold that laundry, it's going to create a pile because I'll take it out and I'll put it on the bed. But if I don't, see, I know me. You have to lean in and appreciate what your shortcomings are. I have to fold that laundry and put it away per load, because if not, it's going to grow bigger and bigger. Now I have Mount Everest, and I will have this weird sort of inner brat clutter blindness where I will take this big old thing, 3 different trips to go from the bed to the treadmill. If I need to lay on the bed, if for some odd reason I'm getting on the treadmill, I'm going to pick it up and put it back on the bed. Not going to fold it. No. I'm just going to keep transferring it. I'm going to dig through there, maybe find some underwear, maybe find some socks. I know this about me because I will avoid doing that task. So what do you do in that case? You don't allow yourself to do it because you're going to give yourself 47,000 million reasons why you can't do something. I'm tired. I don't feel like it. This is boring. Task avoidance. The task itself doesn't disappear. The task itself does not disappear. The task itself will continue and continue and continue to be there. And it will get bigger and bigger and bigger. So you might as well address it. See, again, I will say it again. It is easy to show up for ourselves when things are going good, when things are balanced. You're like, oh God, this is great. I've always said, like when you're like, quote unquote, in shape and you're working out, so much easier to show up for yourself. Versus when you first start and you're like, oh my God, this is hard. Oh my God, I'm not seeing any benefits. Yeah, that's when you show up for yourself. That's self-discipline. Motivation is not what we're waiting for. Motivation is not a real thing. Inspiration is fine. Motivation is short-term. It's not going to last forever, but self-discipline will. So by task avoidance, you are not helping yourself any bit whatsoever. But this leads to procrastination, especially when you have ADHD, OCD, things like that, because everything seems like a chore. Yeah, it doesn't matter. We got to get a handle on it. That's why there's medication. That's why there's therapies. That's why there's coaching. Got to do your part. You got to do the 5 journals. Don't tell me you don't have time. You do have time. You just have to create the time. What's important to you? Your mental health or you're feeling like doing something? What's more important to you? Because you're going to go to what's important to you. Okay. And so if it's important to you, then you go into cognitive dissonance. You can't have these goals over here and desires and then act this way. When you have cognitive dissonance, your goals are over here and desires are over here and you want them, but you're not acting like the person you want to be. So that's going to create this big problem. In turn, that's going to give you a lot of different avoidance, like task avoidance. That's why you have to be specific. You do it whether you want to do it or not. It's the thing that has pulled me out of the darkest times of depression in my past, to the point where I didn't even want to get out of bed. Like to lift my head was a chore. Did not matter. Now, I didn't go and clean the entire house. I'd say, okay, I'm going to get up and brush my teeth, but I don't want to get up and brush my teeth. I'm too depressed. I'm so tired. Don't care. Get up. And often when I brush my teeth, I might be able to maybe take a shower when I was in that dark time. Maybe not. But I did it. And I know I could do it. So the next day I'd add something else to it. But I would do it and push myself through it, even in the darkest throes. Because if I didn't, I don't know that I'd be here talking to you today. Right? And that's why the presence, the meditation, the mindfulness, that's why I went into that, got over 95,000 hours in training in that. And there's a reason, because it really saved me. And this can save you too. You show up and you do the things even when you don't want to do them, because the more you avoid it, the bigger it gets. Now, number 6 is definitely not mine, because conflict is a huge part of life. I didn't ask you to walk around being personally conflicted with everything. But number 6 is conflict avoidant. Okay. So we know that conflict avoidant often comes from low self-esteem, PTSD, anxiety. We already know that. But you are avoiding a disagreement with someone. You are avoiding a conversation with someone because you're worried that they're not going to like you. You're worried about those things. You're worried about how it's going to be. But you are not responsible on how anybody else perceives it, receives it, and how their actions are. You might not like their actions. So you might be avoiding something because you know if you bring it up, you might put the nail right in the coffin on that. And that might be the end of that relationship. Well, then maybe it is going to be the end of that relationship. Maybe that's just not good for either one of you. And that's what you have to do. But if you're not, like, it's one thing to have an opinion and talk about what your needs are. Yes, great. That's what communication is. That's how relationships are formed. But be careful of projecting them to where it's like, my opinion is everything. You must agree with my opinion. You see this a lot in the world. Hello, welcome to 2023, right? Like you see it on socials, you see it everywhere. But if you're keeping silent, people pleasers, this is for you. This is a big one for people pleasers. Conflict avoidant is a huge one for people pleasing. You don't want to make somebody mad. Why? Why not? Well, because I don't want them to not like me. Okay, so now we go into self-esteem. See, remember, all of these avoidances are a symptom. A symptom. So you can't just keep treating the symptoms without understanding what the root is. So we have to get you to the root. Okay? So while it may maintain a certain level of harmony for some things, oh my goodness, it is going to hinder any kind of open communication. Now you're in your headspace. Now you're angry at the other person because they didn't do what you wanted them to do and they didn't respond accordingly. And so there's a lot that comes with it. But until you can get, so we know you're not just going to listen to this and be like, all right, I'm not going to be conflict avoidant anymore. Cool, no problem. No. Because we know it comes from lower self-esteem. It comes from taking ownership. It comes from doing the work daily. It comes from being honest with yourself. So it's not a fast process. None of this is a fast process. Nothing on this podcast or many other podcasts in the world, in books, in videos, in YouTubes, none in therapies and coaching, none of it is fast. Stop looking for a fast fix. It does not exist. Period. Okay, I need you to be super clear in that. It does not exist. Sorry, there's something on my little thing here. It does not exist. Okay, and so you have to be very, very clear in this because until then, you're going to keep pushing the narrative. So I want to talk to you about the 7 areas and the reason why you want to get a handle on this conflict avoidance situation. Or not just that as a situation, any of these avoidances that we talked about. The reason that you want to get a hold of them is there's 7 different ways, but we're going to talk about 7 different ways that this is causing a very, this sort of like cycle, like this, it's almost like you're on the outside looking in and you're on the inside and you don't want to be on the, like there's a lot that comes with it. So number 1 is increased stress and anxiety. I mean, that seems like a pretty obvious one that you probably know. Right? But anytime that you're avoiding anything, it increases this level of stress and anxiety, right? The longer you avoid a task or a situation, the more it's there and it's getting bigger and it's getting scarier and it's getting bigger and you keep distracting and you keep kind of like burying yourself in this overwhelm because it's not going anywhere. And if you're constantly in a state of unease and mental strain, it's going to impact your overall well-being. So this is why you got to get a handle on what these deeper roots are. We know that these are the symptoms, so we got to address them, acknowledge them, do so with compassion, not judgment, and then we're going to work underneath that. All right? So number 2 is that's missed opportunities, and I say this all the time. The more that you keep avoiding something because you don't know what the outcome is going to be, you are missing opportunities left and right. You think that staying in your comfort zone is the safe, secure place. Nothing grows there, and it never will. Never will. But when you're avoiding certain things, you're missing out on valuable experiences, valuable information, different personal growth, different ways of going into whatever your purpose is. You're missing opportunities and you're putting yourself in that position by avoiding. You are putting yourself in position. Don't beat yourself up, but be aware that if I'm telling you you're putting yourself there, guess what that means? You can pull yourself out of that. That's the gorgeous part. That's the beautiful part. Now, number 3 is if you're avoiding something, you can not fulfill your obligations. Yeah, sure, I'll take care of that. Yep, yeah, I'll take care of that next week. Take care of that next week. Take care of that next week. And it never gets taken care of. Well, then you have these unfulfilled obligations. And it doesn't just mean at work. It could be personal tasks as well. You know, it's like you're going to have these half-done projects. Welcome to the world of ADHD, by the way. You will have a lot of half-done projects because your brain goes, oh, let's start this. And it goes, okay, yeah, that was fun. Okay, let's start something new. And so that's why the self-discipline, and that's why you lean into your adult ADHD or OCD or anything else. It's good once you can get it. But you have to understand that the more you avoid it, the more that you are letting yourself down for sure, but also others. And so don't beat yourself up over it. Just be aware of it so you can understand, hey, what are some of the negative impacts? Because this is a big one. The more you avoid a task, right? If I avoid paying my taxes, well, it's going to bother me. Number one, now I'm going to get in trouble. Now it's a whole big thing that didn't have to be in the first place, right? So that's what you have to understand. You're going to have to allow yourself to, example, I'm recording this. I'll give you an example. I'm recording this during the week of VidCon. Well, last year I was at VidCon in California and I was speaking at it. It was great. I made a lot of good connections, a lot of good friends. It was amazing. Would have loved to be there again this year, but I'm still working on my book and it's a priority. So you shelf some things because if I keep avoiding it, then I'm going to keep avoiding it. Now, it's not that I avoided it. I just had to redo my priorities, which we'll talk about a little bit more in on the Patreon, because if you have to constantly restructure what your priorities are, because if you don't, then you're going to get too married to what it is that you want it to be. And we just can't do that. So number 4 by your avoidance is reduce productivity. I mean, that kind of seems like an obvious one, right? If you're avoiding stuff, well, it's nothing getting done. So your productivity is there. Guess what happens? We feed our procrastination. We find a reason to be distracted. We turn on a video. We watch some TV, which, by the way, love. End of the night, that's my jam. But don't do that as a distraction. Do it because you enjoy it, not because you're escaping anything. There's a whole difference between escapism and avoidance. Escapism is so healthy and good. It's like that. It's like a little bit of like a daydreaming. It's kind of why meditation is so great, right? You're kind of like in that space. You're just escaping from reality for a few minutes, a little bit of time. Then you come back, you're a little bit more rejuvenated. That's great. Avoidance is not productive. Escapism is, because it's a short period of thing. That's the entire concept of mindfulness and staying present. There's a short burst of escapism, which is healthy, and avoidance is not. Okay. And if you're not meeting your goals and desires, now you feel, now, and this is a snowball, right? Oh, I didn't get that finished. Oh my God, I suck. I knew I sucked. Piece of shit. I'm a piece of shit. Look at this. I can't do anything right. So you see what I'm saying? Like that creates an increase in that low self-esteem. So you in your mind, you're negatively validating by being unproductive, right? In that reduced productivity, you're just spotlighting and saying, see, I totally knew that I deserved this. No, we can break that cycle. You put yourself here, not intentionally. So guess what? You have the control to get out of it. It's not going to be fast. It's going to be a daily practice for the rest of your life. Stop looking for fast fixes. That's your other issue. Stop looking for fast fixes. You got to go through the deep root of the problem. And it's not one off. You got to keep doing it and doing it and doing it. Now, also by constantly avoiding, it wreaks havoc upon your mental health. It destroys your mental health. It destroys it. It's going to give you guilt. It's going to give you self-doubt. It's going to give you shame. It's going to give you insecurity. It's going to give you low self-esteem because you're like, look at me, I can't get it done. So now it's the chicken and the egg. Well, now I can't get it done. So then I'm just not going to do it. But then when I don't do it, it's going to increase this. So now you're on this merry-go-round. You got to walk your own path. You got to be uncomfortable. You got to do it when you don't feel like it. You got to break it down into small bite-sized pieces. And you must fall in love with the process. I don't give a damn about the end goal. That can be a part that you say, okay, this is where my end goal is. Do not ever get attached to that end goal because you will miss out on opportunities left and right. You will not take the steps. The moment something goes off track and you're not going to meet that, whatever that is, oh my gosh, you are going to spiral. You cannot do that. So by avoiding, you are increasing all of this mental kind of deterioration around this, right? And so you got to understand that because, it really is like, okay, it increases your anxiety, your depressions, things like that. Now, number 6 with that is, oh my goodness, it can strain some relationships. You avoiding things will strain some relationships. And if you get a chance, listen to the attachment series. I think I did it on my YouTube. And it goes into each one of the attachments, and avoidant attachment is one of them. But we're just talking about avoiding things in general. But this can strain relationships. If you're avoiding certain things and responsibilities, a person is only like, if something is due and you don't get it done in time and all these things happen, well, now certain expectations at work aren't being met. That's creating a problem. There's going to be a level of resentment. There's going to be there's going to be a lack of trust. There's a lot of things that come into play. Just because you avoid the gray elephant in the room does not mean it does not exist. It exists, and you're allowing it to get bigger and bigger and bigger every time that you avoid it. And then you'll go, well, I just can't help it. I'm overwhelmed. Yes, I live with that. That is not an excuse, and it's no one else's responsibility to deal with your overwhelm but you. So it will create and strain on relationships. And boy, oh boy, will this limit your personal growth. You're not going to have any personal growth if you're constantly avoiding. I mean, you can't. Like, you're in a box. You can't. If you are not stepping outside that comfort zone, if you are not walking the path of more resistance, not least resistance, we can all walk the path of least resistance. We're not doing that. You walk the path of resistance. Go off on your own. Explore things by yourself. Make your own mistakes. Do the things that you don't feel like doing. Be a circle of one for a little bit. Because until you do it, you're going to miss out on opportunities. You're going to feel as though you have FOMO, fear of missing out. You're going to miss out on learning. You're going to definitely not have resilience, because how are you going to have resilience if you're just staying in the comfort zone? You're never going to be resilient in anything. You're going to feel like you're a prisoner to it. And then because of that, you're not going to be able to adapt. You're not going to be able to appreciate change. It's going to hinder so many different parts of you. So yes, avoidance is never going to be your friend. Again, temporary avoidance, like, hey, I can't deal with this moment in time. That's fine. But don't let these moments in time become hours and days and years and weeks and months. No, because it's not for anybody to experience but you. You have to get through what that avoidance is. You have to process what that avoidance is. You have to get to the deeper rooted issue. Do not use your avoidance and your other issues as an excuse to be a certain way and act a certain way and not make changes. Life in general is meant to be hard. That is the experiences in which we live. But the more that you resist doing the things you don't want to do and not having a plan and not having a structure, you're not helping yourself. I promise you that. 100%. I promise you that. And yes, it can be changed. We're going to talk about that. Okay. So jump on over to the Patreon. We'll talk more about that. But I promise you that what you want to do is you want to get clear as to your why. Why are you avoiding it? Because it's uncomfortable. That's not a good enough reason for me. What is it that you're afraid of about yourself? You have to start there, because that's where you can create systems. That's where you can create processes. That's where you can say, okay, I got to give myself this time to, in this boring nonsense, to sort of plan a strategy. There's no magic pill. I can't give you a magic pill and it's just going to go away. You still have to do the hard work. You still have to break things down. You still have to look at what your priorities are. You don't have to worry about everybody else approving those priorities. But before you can even get there, you got to understand why you're avoiding. What level do you fall in under that avoidance? How is that affecting your relationships? What part of your past do you still need to process and work on? Then you can start implementing the strategies.